Four young people head out to the desert for a few days to film a music video, and all hell breaks loose. Well, you know what they say about camping? It's intense. Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today we'll be talking about The Outwaters, a new found-footage horror film by Robbie Banfitch that some are comparing to the Blair Witch Project. And while I can see the similarities, it's the differences in approach and execution that ultimately hold The Outwaters back from reaching the same lofty heights within the found-footage subgenre. Like Blair Witch, The Outwaters takes a less is more approach to what it's willing to show to the audience, until it takes a more is more approach in the third act. But I'll get to that in a bit. The idea is that what you don't see is often scarier than what you do see. The key difference is that Blair Witch goes to great lengths to establish the looming threat that the characters in that film will be facing. When Heather, Josh, and Mike get lost in the woods in Blair Witch, we fear for them because we have been well versed in the legend and the lore of the Blair Witch, and so we have a sense of what might be waiting for them out there in the shadows. In The Outwaters, the characters have no idea what horrors await them out there in the desert, and neither do we. So when things finally start to happen, there are some moments of tension and fear, aided by some terrific sound design, but after a while, these feelings are replaced by confusion and eventually annoyance, because the film spends so much time not showing us what's going on. Now, The Outwaters has a pretty standard found footage setup. The film begins with a recording of a 911 call, and then title cards inform us that Michelle, Robbie, Scott, and Angela went missing in the Mojave Desert back in 2017. We are then informed that the footage we're about to see comes from the recovered SD cards from their recently discovered cameras. We then spend the next, 30 or 40 minutes watching as the characters go about their daily lives as they prepare for the trip out to the desert to film a music video. This is all done so we can get to know the characters, see them in their natural habitat, so that when bad things start to happen, we'll feel badly for them. But we never really do get to know them. I mean, we do get little bits of information here and there, like one character's mother recently passed, and another doesn't visit his mother nearly enough, and yet another lives in New Jersey, works in an office, and has never been to the desert. Riveting. This lack of character development might not be such a problem if the characters had any personality whatsoever, but they just seem like boring people who engage in boring conversations. There's nothing really interesting or memorable about any of them, and to be honest, I found the first act to be pretty much a snooze fest. And herein lies one of the big problems of the found footage style of filmmaking. It allows the filmmaker to skimp on things like dialogue and character development, because the whole idea is that we're just dropping in on the lives of these characters. They don't want their film to feel scripted because it is supposed to be found footage, after all. But what we usually end up with instead is the rather painful experience of watching inexperienced actors ad-lib most of their dialogue while trying to act as naturally as possible. Now, this might sound a little strange, but one of the issues I had with The Outwaters is just how terrific the cinematography is at times. If this weren't a found footage film, I'd be raving about how lush and gorgeous the photography is. And yes, I understand the argument can be made that the characters are supposed to be making a music video, so presumably they have access to really good cameras and the guy doing the filming knows what he's doing. But there are times that what we're looking at is so cinematic that it feels less like a found footage film and more like a filmmaker who's trying to have it both ways. On the one hand, trying to show what a skilled filmmaker he is, while on the other being able to cheat his way out of producing a fully realized narrative by leaning into the restrictive nature of the subgenre he's chosen to work in. And wouldn't you know it, once all the shit starts to go down in the second act, all that beautiful photography goes away, and the film decides to fully embrace its found footage concept. Now all of a sudden, most of the screen is black, and all we can see is what's illuminated by a small circle of light coming from the film's camera. We can hear the sounds of the group being attacked by someone or something, but all we see are glimpses of the carnage here and there. Blood on the ground, a bloody face, and lots of screaming and squishy noises of mutilation on the soundtrack. And yes, sometimes what we're not shown can be scarier than what we are, but only if it's done correctly and in small doses. Consider that famous scene in Reservoir Dogs where Mr. Blonde is torturing the cop, and he's about to move in on him with a straight razor. The camera pans away, and what happens next is left to our imaginations. It's an excruciating and truly terrifying scene. So this technique of not showing us what's happening can be effective, to a point. In the Outwaters, we get 10, 15, 20 minutes of mostly darkness where we can't really see anything save for a few glimpses here and there, and after a while it just becomes more annoying than terrifying. So I spent much of the first act of the film being bored, and much of the second act being annoyed. The third act goes back to the more cinematic style of the first act, and while I was grateful to finally be able to see what was going on, a lot of it's confusing. There are some hints that whatever it is extraterrestrial or interdimensional. Toward the end of the film, we get some trippy, hallucinatory visuals, as well as some truly horrific gore effects that leave little to the imagination. Now, these scenes aren't quite enough to redeem the film. It's a case of too little too late. But there is one moment in particular that would make King Missile proud. If you know, you know. And there are other moments of self-inflicted body horror that will leave you wondering, if this is a found footage film, why is this guy still filming? I have to mention the bloody snake-like creatures that scream as they slither by. If only because it's here where we realize that maybe this is why they didn't show us what was happening for half the film, because it feels like the type of practical creature effect you might find in a cheesy 1950s sci-fi film. Overall, I think The Outwaters falls a little bit short of the mark. It's never truly convincing as a piece of found footage. I kind of wish Banfitch had just scrapped that angle and made a proper movie, because he does have some talent, especially visually. But that would have required better dialogue, a more fleshed out story, and certainly better actors. And perhaps a slightly bigger budget. Making this as a found footage film allowed him to cover up some of these deficiencies, and while I appreciate the effort, the whole thing just didn't come together for me. I'm giving The Outwaters 2 out of 4 stars. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked this video, please leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great day.